Are you a Filipino living in Middle East, Europe, Asia and the Pacific, USA or Canada? You are our story. You are our Filipinos World. The Filipinos World Saturday every 4 to 5 p.m. only here.
This program is brought to you by Love Module and Envirocool.
Good afternoon, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and to the Filipinos across the globe. My name is Agnes, and you are watching live here in the Filipinos World.
With kindness, we heal as one. We serve, we share, we show compassion. We heal as one.
President Rodrigo Duterte directs barangay chairman to restrain unvaccinated people from going out and arrest those who refuse to stay at home. The chief executive says barangay captains can also delegate authority to civilians.
I'm now giving orders to the barangay captain to look for those persons who are not vaccinated and just would request them or order them, if you may, to stay put. And if he refuses, arrest the recalcitrant persons.
What do you think? Not vaccinate according to personal choice alone? And I'm going to put this question first to Attorney Jeanne.
Thank you for your question, Paul. As we all know, the legal framework, international law evolves like one war behind. And so for every public emergency, the legal framework always evolves exponentially. The governance structures and regulations are sort of we haven't seen before. And so this question is very ripe. Should we vaccinate based on our personal choice or responsibility? And the data on vaccine safety and efficacy are slowly influencing behavioral change towards acceptance of the vaccine. And so personally, I COVID-19 vaccination and I will continue with my personal.
Dr. John, the same question to you.
Okay, the main purpose of immune regarding the COVID-19. The concept right now is this. Many are vaccinated, and why is there a need for those unvaccinated, where in fact we are vaccinated at all? So the concept here is that it is of human rights, the right to safety of those who would like to be not vaccinated. So the contradictions on all these aspects will be the concept that would contradict in the issue. And me as a citizen, I have this unvaccinated. They would say that you are. So why is there a parade for this vaccine? The presumption of vaccinations, immunization. Those who are unvaccinated, we could not prevent their rights because they have their own liberty, the basic human rights to travel, and the economic and social rights. They need to be employed. They need to make a living. So preventing these rights would create what? Would create a problem and also deprive them the right to live. So that is how I look at it. So that the issue of human rights is, and what is human. Each and every country right now would have their own version of how they interpret human rights itself. Mandatory is good, but we need to look at the respect on liberty, on how they like to live and what they like to do to their body. And remember, the vaccination aspect is that are being injected to people. These are all experimental itself, and there's still the issue of the effectiveness. Okay. So it is more of the human judgment.
Dr. John, this is just going to be a quick sort of your immediate response to the situation we face. We're going to get into the nature of the individual shortly. I'm going to ask another set of questions regarding the individual's fears and concerns, particularly given the length of time the vaccines have been in existence, to know exactly what it is they're putting in their body. But I need to move across to Charlie, Attorney Charlie. Your response, Attorney Charlie, to this, first fundamental question. Should the individual make a decision for the right to have a vaccine or not?
we should balance the constitutional duty of the government or the state vis-a-vis the right of the citizens to liberty and free will as to choose what they want. If that we are into an emergency right now. So this interest should yield to the better interest of the greater accessibility to promote the health of its citizens. But right now, the empirical data proves that the inoculation proves largely in favor of the citizenry. This is because according to the latest studies, most of the hospitals unvaccinated. So I think they are into emergency, and we should have a better balancing of the interests that we are all facing right now. And I believe that this inoculation or vaccination should be made mandatory.
Okay, that's a very well-worded, strongly put perspective. The issues we face, it's the implicit contradictions of when and how a government can act to mandate, to spell out for something like a vaccination, the community as a whole, not just the individual. That government is making collective decisions. We need to be aware, the core of this is the issue of human rights, and this is what we're trying to protect and understand above all else. Into any of your mouths, it's the nature go in introducing, let's say, a mandate that actually some would consider is in violation of the human rights of the individual. I'm going to come back to you, Jeanne, on that point. We're seeing, a lot of what's happening is down to, I'm going to say, interpretation, the highest level, and decide, is it a pro-government to mandate vaccines and also in the world?
So the Commission on Human Rights in its advisory has stated that mandatory vaccination should be distinguished from compulsory vaccination and voluntary vaccination. It is the withholding of valuable social goods and services in case of non-vaccination, and compulsory vaccination, refusal to be inoculated, and forced vaccine into the body. And the Commission on Human Rights has stated that mandatory vaccine to human rights, it's impermissible, and the major critique should be this. And at the moment, our spokesperson has released a press statement against the DOTR to implement the no vaccine, nation card, no ride in public transportation, and it suffers overbreadth and it limits.
Okay, Dr. John, it's not just about inequalities across the board as far as one community is vaccinated, but they don't have access to the vaccine ruling, that they can't actually access them. That more or less across the board now, it's happening at the public service level, where you've got public service in it, or to test 3 times a week basis in order to demonstrate that they're not. What's your view, Dr. John, as far as part of it shouldn't be, where the nature of the world we live in is inconsistencies?
The point mandatory vaccination is being correlated to the restriction of liberty. The point there is that it is justified as long as it prevents harm to other people. But the case here is that, again, would also violate their liberty for social and economic movement. Now, having to be vaccinated and the other to be unvaccinated, it is more of, by now, in which some are, as they say, because there are groups of infected. And at this point, why I do not like to be vaccinated, the concept is the issue is religion, and others is more of the issue on the vaccine itself, as I look at it. Because there's the issue where people, when we say it goes to the principle of proportionality. The more vaccinated, the lesser what happened during the time that there are less vaccinated, but the infectionality concept in terms of data, because more people are being myself is vaccinated, and I also have the fear to go out. Why? Because infected and being transmitted the virus. So it's immunization. So what is the concept of vaccination if there's no pure? That's the thing. It's very contradictory. I like to be vaccination is immunization, and people are not yet immune. And
okay, well, you make a very good point, Attorney Charlie. Stand and adopt the wisdom from the science that 2 vaccines provides a further level and it seems that Omicron, we're near the same number of hospitalized. The global numbers and the science associated with that can still be hospitalized or can still contract the virus, and others not. From science, still, yes, but I'm a vaccine that's not been in existence for long enough to know there's directly, indirectly, if it's for to hold on to my job. And that's happening as a byproduct, admitted or not, to employ people who are or who aren't vaccinated. You've still got the idea to be in violation if they are genuinely, new science. Why should they?
Before I
What's
go
your views?
that while we are discussing the movement of or the pronouncement of the government who refused to vaccinate ordinances, which combine the compulsory and mandatory character of the mandatory. The mandatory would entail while the compulsory means it is embodied. This local government combined with holding of services like public transport and also the impose. Now there's no difference between vaccination. Now has not been contemplated upon because this is a greater variant from the transmission of this. And we have to admit that you have mentioned a while ago, Mr. Paul, if you are going to mandate this supply, in fact, there are only nations that can neutralize this Omicron. The Paxlovids, according to the articles, are not suitable. And this is an underlying, as you have mentioned a while ago, the workers of the government or the private do not have vaccination. Of course, this is a primarily it's like pushing them against the wall, and human right that is affected if we do not enforce this mandatorily. And I think too many fake news. I think that's what affects the discernment of the citizens, and have a public education of the people, because if the people understand, you don't have to mandate, you then have to stand. I think public education is lacking in our part.
I agree. The challenge to educate, the challenge to educate and inform has been there. And there's been a lot of retrospective decision making and policy making to inform a greater understanding. And in some respects, you can't blame the same way that we are. They just have access to resources as well as the scientists who actually manage. We're in a world where too much power, whether it's an elected government or the thin end of the wedge, as we say in the UK, it's your skills don't tend to be brought back. It says, if we deem it necessary, we will mandate this, and you will have to, act on. You're raising your hand, so I'm going to go straight to you.
I'd like to follow up because the people to be vaccinated and not to create fear. The problem is that there is the miseducation regarding the importance of vaccination. So it is more of education. Why is there a need for you to take this vaccine? So it's more of encouraging them from going out. If you're unvaccinated, I was vaccinated, I will educate you. I would not tell you, you will go to jail. That I do not know what is happening. If it is an ordinary individual that treat them, we need to encourage benefits of vaccination. So that's the thing. It's not, and within this point is that the concept of the right itself, because educated on what are the benefits of vaccination. So these are the things that we need to. People will be afraid, and when people will be afraid and people will be arrested,
so
they're
usually,
right.
Or lack of information, or in some respects, misinformation during this program, where we need to educate. Job of educating, we're not doing. How can we educate better? What should we be doing?
So since the start of the pandemic, the communication and they're credible. Locally, we have seen local governments adapt to the science communication materials into the local vernacular. People have the cons of vaccination, the risks. The scientists are trying to develop, and to a large extent, for the past few months, that had our vaccine anecdotal reports about it, largely because they've been out about gene alteration, ability to provide credible, can discuss the pros and cons of reprisal, bullying in the communities.
Okay, so come to you. The very same ones that are not being believed or trusted, unfortunately. At one end, turning government control through various, insidious methods, so how to pin down a discussion on, the grounds of drawing in the data with somebody who says, I don't believe the information I'm getting from the government, my behavior. What's your response to that?
Well, try watching a local TV in the Philippines. Unfortunately, then COVID prevention. The worst thing here is the very first news information that goes down. Last week, I was rushing my child to the hospital, and you know what? Hospitals nearby have closed admission because they are full, and yet you can hear from the government that there is no maximum utilization of hospitals yet. And yet the information that goes to the ground is that most of the vaccinated people are those who feel. This creates a dilemma, to the people hospitalized. Then what's the difference it creates? Do not receive the vaccines. It's extra effort to really educate the public and reach out to the grasp of what's happening. I think of this government, some government authorities, they speak over the TV of what is really happening.
We imagine we would only need to take you would only need to take them to a COVID ward and to the realities of what happens when you get infected, and that would be some to them. And yet that's not practical. You can't take people to, we're still in a situation where an anti-vaxxer will say of what information you put in front of them, and that person still has rights. Dr. John.
I'd like to follow up again. You mentioned vaccinated are those in the hospitals. That's again the concept of the doctrine of more vaccinated, there are more infection. Now, the issue is that, if we take this issue as a purely health issue, and this is the mandatory vaccination, that this issue. So political concept and aspect and the law, and focus on the concept of public safety. People would understand what safety is. Political agenda, contradictions would exist. And once people would not believe the educator because it is highly political problem. This issue would not be a problem here because once people recognize that it is for my safety, liberty, would also benefit me. This political candidate, they are calling at the issue on the health and public safety. It is more a concept that we would not do law enforcement if people are well educated, would not even arrest people because there would be no violation. And even the vaccinated would not go out because they would say. So it's more of telling the people, giving the real agenda, and we should concentrate on such public safety concerns.
You make a good point, and if it's framed as a public safety issue, aspects that may be abused as far as there's a hidden agenda behind this. The government's trying to do something that Attorney Charlie said that generally speaking now, those that are dying from COVID are the ones that are not vaccinated. And so again, without trying to say, I told being made for those that want to respond to that information, the hospital vaccinated and those that are dying are those that are unvaccinated. That's a clear statistic. This question of, how does, and it's already there, written into the authority to be able to, these are the rules according to the human rights of individual, government of the day to ensure you. Somehow or another, responded to in the way that perhaps we ideal. Jeanne, what's your thoughts?
We have, the Commission on Human Rights, so we monitor government compliance to international human rights treaties. Cannot say that the government is also not responding to it. But at the local level, so being recognized by the regional our opinion was also the ILG regarding the placards outside the patients, and our advice cascaded to the local government units. So and the response of government to a large extent, there are hot topics, no vaccination card as a ground for not hiring workers, periodic presentation of a negative arm.
So do you think, Attorney Jeanne, the commission, you would be advocating, what does it mean for an individual to have human of the data regarding this apolitical, which is informed and is not trying to advocate it's for everyone to say, well, out of all the human rights, but there's not enough of you communicated and respected or responded to. What would you say?
Yes, our workers have stretched rather where complaints from citizens, and lately we've received public school teachers who are vaccination card, and that PCR test result every 2 weeks. So this question can be regional level at the locality, but field is to conduct community-based depth ed regional heads and discuss at a community analysis to the national state framework can be revisited and defined.
So it may be that we would see as more ads for political human rights. They're not ads as such; they're public information broadcast, but they see it with a degree of frequency for it to have. It could be. I'm going to go to you, Charlie, as you made that point. So yes,
I couldn't agree more on the point of Atty. To the great extent, of course. But like what compel the vaccination, there should be a law, and the law should have a legitimate objective addressed to the national government to observe if it is to. This obviously, because right now the local government have several local government. The first are the local governments covered by the national capital region, and these ordinances country. This restrict or limit the citizens, or violate points that the CHR that if you are a nation, this should be made as in. But we have to admit that the local government units have already ordinances, and there have been arrests.
Well, we've seen across the world the way in which, particularly now, mandatory COVID, always like the governments are saying work using a public broadcaster, using the soft approach. They're now on the continuum of work and their anticipatory level and the start of the pandemic. They're now taking a different wave of resentment from those that are saying, it shouldn't be vaccinated. So, Dr. John, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to assess. I was a municipal councillor before, and when I did that, there should be a national law that would guide my ordinance. The problem, announcement of the president, there is no national vaccination. So what happened is that an ordinance, you go to acceleration of principles, wherein your local ordinance, you could put sanction again. The problem right now is just a mere statement. But the problem here is that without looking at and consulting and looking at the different aspects of the law, such as so the idea is that when you go to the local level, and somebody could question the ordinance itself. Well, the ordinance. Why? As I mentioned, there is no mandatory law, a national nation. So if this should be the case, local government, municipal and city governments, without a proper reference or without their mandatory, because if there is such a, they could see the concept of the contradictions. The human rights aspects would be looked at locally ordinances. When you enact local ordinance, I was very amazed because when the president, local government, the barangay, they come up, public consultation, was there a public hearing? That ordinances. So these people, are they consulted problem? It's still a problem of what the law is.
I think,
yeah, that's
again, you make some very good points. Witnessing is the fact that the pandemic isn't waiting for us. New strains, new situations that could be municipality, ordinance. We simply don't have the infrastructure at the legal and medical level back foot, and it's almost back and reflect what could we have done better. And I'm going to put that question to all of you now. If we were in on the pandemic that's gripped our lives for more than 2 years, the knowledge that we have, would we be introducing local level legislation firmed up into a particular in constitution? But what would we do differently? What have we really learned of existing? And I'm going to start with Charlie.
The sphere now is very much different because the national government have been devolved to local government fusion, has granted the local 2160 the power to enact. I see no question about this local welfare of its constituents, but what the national government had been relegated to be supplemented by this local government. Local government to handling this pandemic effectively. The media, these local executives have project a more effective media exposures. Institution has granted enough authority. Going back, we can only handle this. How could the national government have a problem that we should have implemented a travel ban immediately? So, well, that's an afterthought. What this local government, if you compare, we can, no, but we could have at least taken. We should have unified this and adapted, armed us.
So, we're all wise after the event. It's extremely difficult, especially one which is so emotive and reactionary as far as people's feel. No greater challenge that, to put, a particular strain for human rights. All gazing, if we had it, but what do you think will be the tutored, in the best possible sense, we could say we've got better science now. This was no easy thing to get through and understand of what we think human rights are, culture as a society, the human race.
The local mechanism have a rapidly changing local context. But what I did, that's my duty station, since March of the local chief executive, director of commerce and healthcare, and so in giving access to and keeping the market open, we have and the city queue, the highest quarantine in July of 2020 side. I think it puts keep the health check and the family safe. Rights is not a panacea to this pandemic. It is if the local chief executive here does, if we communicate daily, and it follows or regulates itself, that the World Health and the medical health practitioners.
Hindsight and the examples of what seem to be very sound policy to people, and that the impact of that is greater than working from home, if indeed they can, and not many people workers, obviously. And to then have a different understanding, a good idea at that time to make this decision. And this goes back to some of Dr. John's intrinsic contradictions, what seemed to be starved economically, the long-term, the short consequences potentially, and what else, if herd immunity levels with the pandemic. But I'm not about to advocate that, because which country, what sector. So, Dr. John, closing remarks from yourself.
Actually,
please.
if we would go to handle the situation, that I would still look at the basics of principle and simple functions. And what's this? We need to look at this function: organizing, the directing, the staffing, and the controlling pattern of the pandemic. So we need to come up with a general plan per se on how to control the pandemic. Organize. If during that time we have already entry of travelers, that they have the massive infection. If Singapore can do it and manage how pandemic management would be implemented, as I mentioned, organizing direct for people in this pandemic management, and who are the authority in the health issue concern. Therefore, national security concern. So militaries and other eligible or qualified to handle this. It is more of the knowledge itself on how to handle health issue and public issue. Because if you go back again, maybe we need to start with the education. Let's educate first during the time when the pandemic was in use. This is the coming pandemic. Let's educate the policy. And within that policy, that's the time when law enforcement would come in. But if the people are educated enough for us to mitigate, to prevent the pandemic, there would be no violators. Increase the numbers and volumes of and proper policy development, and law understand those policies would not violate the law. And people.
Okay, I think I'm going to move on to asking remarks from Attorney Jeanne. Just one point from what Dr. put out, as far as it's have to look at the Constitution of it's able to do what it does because of the way it's structured, institutions, different governments enacting the way. So. We are who we are with the laws and the constitution of the country that we're in, not quite like to have what they have. It's huge. Attorney Jeanne, your closing remarks, please.
In getting through this pandemic, leadership that is aligned with the human rights, domestic legal framework of different states, towards greater compliance of human rights. And Taiwan was primarily during their contact tracing, Korea as well, they cases. But at that time, these countries have also had experiences, and we get by with what we have. We have the capacity to, but we remain steadfast in what we and that is our principles that are also
Wonderful.
enshrined in
Okay,
our
closing remarks,
Constitution.
please.
Thank you, Paul. In closing, state to compel compulsory 46. And what I can only see as the real problem of government by relaxing its rules. Come the holiday, sound policies increase the lockdown. If the cases, if we are to get through.
Thank you. Well,
thank you.
I'd like to say special thank you, Attorney Charlie, Attorney Jeanne, dominating discussion. I'd like to perhaps invite you back for a follow-up within the Philippines. And as we manage, the government perhaps doesn't have an easy job trying to waiting to be managed. Thank you once a year, and special thanks from the Filipino world for your time on this Saturday.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Take care.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Labmodal manufactures a highly distinctive and exclusive range of interior solutions that combines functional excellence with design appeal. Solutions with integrated, innovative, ergonomic features to well-designed workplaces. Our company is based on the inherent values that shape the core of who we are. It is through our living values that we continue to fulfill the promise of our ideal and environmental design standards. Each and every groundbreaking product we've introduced over the years has been the result of our team's hard work and dedication to provide our absolute best to who we care most about, who is our customers. Whether the job is big or small, our team is used to solving complicated tasks and makes sure to get projects to successful completion. Whether it is local or global. This is why Labmodal is known as one of Europe's leading manufacturers of innovative system solutions for devices used in laboratory facilities, hospitals, and educational facilities. Solutions that can be easily adapted to the growing needs and workflows demands of the future. Labmodal, designing safety.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So much.
We serve, we share, we show compassion. We heal as one. So what anymore?
isa sa ating dasal. Lahing nagpapatunay na tayo'y makatao pa.
Together we are being called to make a future world.
The test we face is for us to prove